Well, welcome to a short talk on the Infinity system, which is a new hair removal system or a modification of a pre-existing system. Lumenis has been in the hair removal business back from about 18 years ago, 17 years ago with the original LightSheer system, which is one of the standard of care in laser hair removal, laser hair reduction, we should call it now, at 810 nanometers. So there are two novel features of the newer system, and that's going to involve spot sizes and wavelength changes. Laser hair reduction is a very common procedure, still the most common procedure that we do in the aesthetic industry in dermatology. And people want speed and comfort. Speed and comfort are the two most important in efficacy. So speed, comfort, and efficacy. If it's fast and comfortable, it doesn't work, obviously that's not good either. So you want safety and efficacious, you want comfort for sure, and you want to be comfortable before, during, and after the treatment. You want versatility. You want to be able to treat a large range of hair types and skin types. You want to be able to treat darker patients with somewhat lighter hair, and of course the easy patients or the lighter patients with darker hair. That's very important in all body areas. So if you have a very small spot, you're going to be limited to treat small areas unless you have a very patient nurse or you're very patient to treat a large area. We used to treat whole backs with the old 9x9mm handpiece, which worked very well, but the time was very, very long, and that was very onerous for the physician or the nurse who did the procedure. So speed is important because speed means you're going to get the patient in and out of there faster. Patients have things to do. We all have a lot of things to do. They don't want to sit on a table for a long period of time, and if it's more comfortable, you don't have to use numbing cream, which also means the patient has to stay there a long time. So that's the most important features. Now, what wavelengths do we use for laser hair reduction? There are four major wavelengths that are used. One is intense pulse light, which is a broad range of wavelengths. A second one is alexandrite at 755 nanometers. Very close is 810 nanometers. And finally, for darker skin types, we usually choose 1064 nanometers. Although the melanin absorption peters out as a function of wavelength, it turns out that the highest ratio of hair heating to epidermal heating is with the longer wavelength, 1064. So some might ask, why don't we use 1064 nanometers for every patient? Well, it turns out for lighter hair, it's hard to generate enough fluence to heat the lighter hair. And secondly, it tends to be a little bit more painful than 810 nanometers. So the two wavelengths we're going to talk about today are 810 nanometers and 1064. That will allow you to treat both skin types, or a broad range of skin types from 1 through 5, and also more importantly, a broad range of hair thicknesses and hair types. So here's again a list of the different available types of devices, and each has advantages and disadvantages. It's not that one has 100% of the advantages, but if you line up all the features, these two wavelengths certainly are very good ones because they've time tested, they've been around for a long time, and again you can titrate your wavelength, your pulse duration, and spot size for the hair type and the skin type. So power is important. Peak power is important mainly for thinner hairs. If you have a very thin hair, you tend to want to use a short time. That's going to generate more heat in the follicle. If you have a thick hair, you can go to a longer time and you'll generate a little bit less heat, but sometimes a bit more comfort. So it turns out that we generally want to use the small spot. We can generate high peak powers, and for the large areas, we'll tend to use a larger spot. So what's the advantage of a large spot size? Well, a large spot size is going to give you more penetration. It turns out with a larger spot size, even with the equivalent surface fluence, you generate more heat deep in the tissue. A hair follicle tends to be between 3 and 4 millimeters deep in the skin. So a larger spot with the same fluence is going to provide greater heating. So one might ask, why don't we use a large spot for every case? Well, there are two reasons. One, if you're working in a very convex or concave area, you want a smaller spot to navigate the valleys and hills. Secondly, with a larger spot, typically you're going to have a decrease in total fluence. So there are different reasons why you would or would not use a large spot for different cases. So here are some of the the mathematics of what goes on, for example. If you're using the bikini area, for example, which has an estimated area of about 125 square centimeters, and use a small spot of 9x9mm, you're going to have to do more pulses, 154. If you do the duet system with a larger high-speed handpiece, which we'll talk about, you only have to do about 16 pulses. So for larger areas, less pulses. So obviously, if you do a man's back, it's going to behoove you to do the larger spots. You don't have to use as many pulses to cover the entire area. Because in a sense, the main criteria for speed is how many centimeters squared you can cover per second. It's like mowing the grass. You can either mow the grass with a big riding lawnmower or a small weed eater. But for large backs, you want to use the large spot handpiece. So this shows the historical sort of generation of where Lumenis was and where they are now. This was the typical system from the late 90s and early 2000s. Still a very good system. These systems are very reliable. Unless you drop the handpiece and throw it up against the wall, they'll last for a long, long time. And then they went to the extra size handpieces, which is 9 by 9 millimeters. Then they went to 12 by 12 millimeters. They had a freestanding system, which was somewhat more modular. And then they have the Duet system, which is the predecessor of the Infinity system, which we're talking about today. So the Duet system, and the reason it was called Duet, there were two different spot sizes. They had a spot size at 9 by 9 millimeters for small areas with thinner hairs or where you had to have good cooling. And then you have the larger 22 by 35 millimeter handpiece for doing broad areas like legs and backs, where you simply want to get done and get done with more comfort and speed. The Infinity platform is going to be an enhancement of that Duet platform, and we'll talk about why it's an enhancement. So again, the high-speed handpiece is the larger handpiece, 22 by 35 millimeters, less fluence because you're generating the energy over a larger area, but still effective enough as long as the hair is dark enough. And then the standard 12 by 12 and 9 by 9 millimeter handpieces, which now can all be on one handpiece. So the nice thing about the new Infinity system is all of these are driven by the same handpiece, so it's just a matter of clicking and clocking another handpiece on top. So if you look at the standard chill tip handpiece, there are a lot of advantages of the chill tip. That was the older handpiece and still available with the new Infinity system. With contact cooling, you apply the pressure to the skin, you get effective epidermal cooling, and you also get compression. And by compressing the skin, you bring the hair follicle closer to the sapphire tip, which means you can use less energy. And secondly, you compress the blood out of the picture. So blood is a competing chromophore to allow you to use less fluence and less pain. So when you're treating small areas and you need high power, the small 9 by 9 or 9 by 27 millimeter handpieces are still the way to go. Now the high-speed handpiece is a very different animal. 22 by 35 millimeters, much, much larger. It employs suction, photon recycling to be able to provide more epidermal protection and also get the hair follicle closer to the diodes. So you involve suction here. The suction actually brings the follicles closer to the diodes. That's going to also decrease the melanin density by spreading out the skin. And thirdly, it provides some pain control because there's a distraction from the vacuum effect. But the critical thing about this is decreased pain, and I'll show a video of that in a second. Patients typically can undergo this treatment without numbing cream. Even men, even weak-minded men on their backs who typically don't do well can get through this treatment. A little coaching, sometimes a little bit, but they won't jump around and like a shark on a hook. So the critical thing is speed and comfort with this handpiece. So stretching, again, reduces the volumetric melanosome density. You're stretching it out, which means more epidermal protection. And again, it also displaces the blood. So again, you're trying to always increase the ratio of hair heating to epidermal heating. The innocent bystander in these cases are blood vessels and epidermal pigment. So you just want to heat the hair. The hair is the target. Everything else, again, is an innocent bystander. So it turns out the vacuum effect with the high-speed handpiece, and this goes into neurophysiology well beyond my comprehension, but there's a neat sort of phenomena. When you have this suction, it actually creates a little bit of a distraction, and that distraction decreases the likelihood of the C fibers, which are the chronic pain fibers, to discharge. So that gives you a nice ratio of efficacy to pain control. And again, that diminishes the role of numbing creams. Now, numbing creams have a couple of problems. If you apply too much, you can have toxicity. It means it costs money to apply the numbing cream and time for your staff. And thirdly, it takes time. Now the patient's in the room not generating income. They're just sitting there with cream. Now here's the high-speed handpiece in action on one of my patients. You'll see he's very comfortable. And this patient, when I treated him with another system with a high peak power laser, he moved a lot. Now he's just commenting now by moving his head that he's okay with the pain. With one of the other systems, he was actually doing this every pulse. So he got through his whole back with the 810 high-speed handpiece in about 12 to 14 minutes, and he was very comfortable during the treatment. So do you want faster or slower? I think this ad says it all.
Basketball, is it better to be a fast player or a slow player?
Fast!
So what would your nickname be?
It would be Fasty, because you're really fast when you go. Because it rhymes with flash.
So do you want to be a fast laser or a slow laser? Clearly you want to be fast.
It's not
The video didn't play this. There's one more here. This is the one we have to go.
What's the biggest number you can think of?
A trillion, billion, zillion.
That's pretty big. How about you?
10.
Okay. How about you?
You need to go louder.
Infinity.
Can you top that?
Infinity and 1.
Actually, we are looking for infinity plus infinity. Sorry.
What about infinity times infinity?
It's not complicated. Bigger is better.
So
and
bigger-
AT&T has the nation's largest 4G.
So bigger, faster is better. It so happens AT&T stole this ad from Lumenis. They're about to use this ad for their platform. AT&T takes the ad and uses it. I think y'all should get some trademark infringement there. So anyway, a little lighthearted stuff there. But faster is better, more is better, and certainly infinity times infinity is better. So that's all good. Infinity squared, maybe they'll rename the laser now. So here are some results, because ultimately you can talk about speed and comfort and wavelengths and all that, but the bottom line is you need to get some improvement. This is Gilly Manavali's pictures with the high-speed handpiece, and this is Mitch Goldman's pictures from the high-speed handpiece. One of the criticisms of the high-speed handpiece was, gee, now we're only using maybe a third of the fluence we're using with the standard handpiece. Are we going to have compromised efficacy? And it turns out with long-term data that these lower fluences and larger spots work reasonably well. So the Infinity is an enhancement of these older platforms that work very well. The nice thing about it is you have a universal connector, and once you connect it, and it's right over there, basically you just take different snap-on attachments. So it's like your vacuum cleaner at home. You have one hose, and you can put different accessories on there. Now you can have a 9x9mm spot with contact cooling, a 9x27mm spot with contact cooling, or the high-speed handpiece with the vacuum. So this allows you a full range, sort of a large spot, a medium spot, and a small spot. So that gives you a lot of versatility. And the second advantage is you can change wavelengths now. The older system was locked in at 810 nanometers. Now we also have a 1060 nanometer handpiece. So now you can, with two handpieces, you can do dark skin, light skin, and a whole range of spot sizes. And a better GUI, a better graphical user interface that allows you to, on the fly, make these changes as far as fluence, spot size, and wavelength. So the Infinity specs are basically the following. We have three different handpieces. We have the 22x35, which used to be called the high-speed handpiece. We have the standard 9x9mm handpiece with contact cooling. And we have this new handpiece, which is an intermediate handpiece, which is sort of a in between, where you get intermediate fluences, still have contact cooling, but also have a reasonable speed when you have areas that are somewhat convex or concave, but not so much you need the smaller handpiece. So if you look at this, you also have the option of wavelength. So with two handpieces in the adapters, you basically have 6 options. You have, it's 2 to the, basically 2 times 3. So you have 6 different configurations, all based with 2 handpieces with 2 different wavelengths. So again, a lot of versatility as far as speed, comfort, fluence, pulse duration, and skin type. These are some papers that have been done. We're working on a study right now looking at the 1060 high-speed hair removal system, which is working quite well for thick black hair. A little bit of the interface. So the interface is very sophisticated as we use smartphones and everybody's doing everything in their smartphone. This is a smartphone-like interface where basically you can choose numbers of pulses, fluence, suction or no suction, and of course that's based partly on the adapter you put on. So it knows what adapter's on there. If you have the 9x9mm adapter, it knows that and it reflects the following. That's why the vacuum is X'd out, because you can't use the vacuum with that setting. And then you can change now and basically choose your hair type, skin type, and your hair thickness, and it will give you representative suggested fluences for those parameters. So again, you can choose different types of parameters. You have a matrix of different things you can choose, and it will give you suggested parameters based on those hair parameters. So you look at the hair features, the skin features, and the device will report back to you in a smart way what are some optimal settings to use based on spot size, fluence, and pulse duration. So the basic system comes with either one high-speed 805 handpiece, one 1060 handpiece, and then the adapters. So again, each wavelength has the three systems. You have the small handpieces, the little bear, the middle-sized bear, and the big bear. And again, it's just 2 wavelengths, 3 adapters, so 6 different sort of total configurations. But the nice thing now is it's all with one twist and turn. You used to have 2 different ports for different spot sizes. Now with the spot sizes, it's simply changing an adapter rather than changing a whole handpiece. So if you just have light skin practice, you might just choose this. If you have a very dark skin practice, if your practice is 80% dark skin and dark hair, you might choose this system. Of course, if you have a typical practice where you have a broad range of skin types and hair types, it would behoove you to have both handpieces. And again, you have the option of all 3 adapters. Here's some early evidence from our study. This is with the 1060 high speed, now the 22 by 35 millimeter handpiece. We're choosing just darker skin types. This is type 4 skin. This is before and after 2 treatments. You see also a reduction in the number and thickness of hair. So that study is ongoing. This is some intermediate data. So that's the Infinity system in a nutshell. It's definitely an enhancement over the older Duet system, which was a good system, but this is a better system. So Lumenis is constantly making the system friendlier for the physician and the patient. Any questions about the system at all? All right, well, thank you very much.